how can we promote the high-integrity carbon market? This time, we will deep dive into the quality of carbon credits and how can we use high-quality carbon credits towards our net zero goal. Welcome to the Carbon Market Now, bringing you timely discussions with key players across the carbon market landscape, exploring policies, tools, and innovations shaping the future of international cooperation on climate action. My name is Kazuhisa Kwakutsu, Kazu, Director of Article 6 Implementation Partnership Center, known as A6IP. A6IP supports countries in the implementation of carbon markets under the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement by building capacity, facilitating knowledge, exchange, and promoting carbon markets that are more transparent, robust, and aligned with the global climate goals of the net zero by 2050. In this episode of Carbon Market Now, we are focusing on integrity in the supply side and demand side of carbon credits. Joining us today is Anna Carolina Szklo, Technical Director, Market and Standard at the Voluntary Carbon Market Integrity Initiative, VCMI, and Anton Svetov, Director for Continuous Improvement Work Programs at the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, ICVCM, both promoting integrity in the voluntary carbon markets. First, we will unpack key aspects of the integrity in the carbon market, then spotlight the perspectives and the initiatives of our guests. Ensuring high integrity in the carbon market is instrumental to ensure carbon markets accelerate action towards net zero emissions. To support and enable these efforts, the G7 Ministers meeting in Sapporo in 2023 has endorsed the principle of high integrity carbon markets, known as G7 principle, laying out the three components of integrity. One is supply side of the credit and demand side of the credit integrity, and third is market integrity. For this episode, we will focus on supply side integrity and demand side integrity. Let me just briefly explain about this G7 principle regarding supply side and demand side. So the supply side integrity, this discussed in this episode, one of the carbon market now is the key for the episode. So this supply side integrity in the G7 principle mentioned about the 5 key principles. One is the way the credit is generated needs to be aligned with the Paris Agreement goal, which is the net zero goal. The second point is the credits are transferred internationally, also contribute to the goal of the countries where the credits are generated. This is more what is called the host country emission reduction contribution. The third one is the credits is used and needs to be aligned with an NDC and under the Paris Agreement for the international aviation. Then the generation of the credit needs to be aligned with Article 6 rules and for those with the CORSIA. The fourth part is a robust and transparent governance. So the supply side also needs to be more transparent in terms of how the credits are generated, and also the governance system is also needs to be more transparently governed. And the fifth part is the sustainable benefits needs to be also included in the supply of the carbon credit. So those are the 5 principles that was mentioned in the G7 principle of the carbon credit. For the demand side, supply, there are 3 points that were mentioned. The first, those who are using the credit, they need to explain how the use of the credits are contributing to their own net zero goals, which is from the government or private or corporate. They have their own net zero goals, and they need to explain how the use of the credit will be really contributing to their goal. And the second point, if you are also using those credits, especially towards the achievement NDC or other international mitigation purposes, they also need to follow Article 6 rules. And the third part is they also need to disclose those information, including the use of the credit, as well as how those credits are they are using towards their net zero goal. So basically, the transparency of those information is really the key for the companies and also governments for the demand side. So those are the key principles that was mentioned in the G7 principle. But of course, how they are implemented is really subject to the each. Those are ensuring the credits to be supplied as well as used. And today, we have ICVCM, which also speak to the supply side, and VCMI, which are also support encouraging the use of demand side. So let us turn to each Anton, Anna, for your explanation and your relationships. And again, thank you very much both to joining today. We greatly appreciate your presence here and looking forward to our conversations. So first, Anton, could you please first describe how ICVCMI supports high integrity in the supply side of the carbon market? So Anton, please.
Thank you very much, Kazu-san, and thank you, A6IP, for convening this. Always a pleasure. So, I mean, we all know that we need more private finance to flow into carbon mitigation projects. This is a crucial vehicle that has been underutilized in the recent years. And as you mentioned in your introduction, one of the reasons why we could not make full use of this instrument is it challenges around integrity. Essentially, whether we can trust that a credit represents a real ton of GHG, of greenhouse gas emissions reduced or removed, and how that is used then by the private sector. So the Integrity Council, the ICVCM, focuses on supply side integrity, by which we mean on the quality and the integrity of the carbon credits themselves. The way we do it is through assessing carbon credits in programs and methodologies against a set of principles. The core carbon principles, the CCPs, are well aligned with the G7 principles that Kazu-san talked about in the introduction. There are 10 core carbon principles that talk about key elements of what constitutes a high quality credit. And they talk about governance, transparency, robust quantification, all of these things that actually prove that a credit is based on the latest science, it delivers real emissions reductions or removals that wouldn't have happened in the absence of the carbon credit and the financial incentives that it creates. And then those credits and the activities around them promote sustainable development and have all the necessary safeguards to the communities involved. Now, the ICVCM is assessing carbon crediting standards, registries, and methodologies. So the sets of requirements that identify whether a credit can be issued or not against those principles. And specifically, they are operationalized in something we call the assessment framework, which is a list of requirements, around 250 requirements of different levels that allow the Integrity Council to say whether this carbon credit is eligible to be labeled with the CCP label, so the Core Carbon Principles label. And through this labeling assessment and labeling process, we are creating the trust into these carbon credits that are then traded internationally. We are creating the confidence among buyers that these represent high quality and represent real additional emission reductions. And so this creates the confidence among buyers, users of these credits to use them for whatever use case they might see fit. So essentially, it's both a assessment process and it's also a collection of requirements and operationalization. It can make a specific implementation of principles into a series of requirements. So this is the core of the Integrity Council's work. We are already seeing that buyers are coalescing around higher integrity credits. Corporates are retiring more high integrity credits. They are targeting purchases of more high integrity credits. And so I think there's really an understanding that in the market that's growing around what good looks like, how does a good credit look like? And then from that confidence, we can proceed to expect increased purchases, increased investment into these credits, that project developers will gravitate towards these project types, and we can help the market grow from that point of integrity.
Thank you, Anton, for your insight into the supply side of the market, and also ICVCM to provide those assessment framework to really build more confidence for the supply side. Now, also now turn to the Anna. Could you please describe how the VCMI supports high integrity in the demand side of the carbon market? Over to you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the Article 6 Implementation Partnership Center for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure also to be here with Anton from ICVCM, our sister organization who works so closely with us. I think I can also already start by building on what Anton was sharing, as I believe that both demand and supply side of integrity need to go together in the market. The VCMI Claims Code of Practice has been launched in June 2023, very close actually to the launch of the CCP. So they both came into place in the same time in the market, giving a very clear sign of what integrity means and high quality. It has been designed for building integrity in voluntary carbon markets, which have the potential to fill the gaps in climate finance mitigation, enhance corporate efforts to transition to net zero, and support the achievement of countries' nationally determined contributions and sustainable development objectives. They can also support and accelerate the introduction of robust, well-designed climate policies. However, this potential can only be realized if activities that truly go beyond business as usual and benefit host communities, the supply side, as Anton was mentioning, and that their use increases overall greenhouse gas mitigation instead of substituting for existing actions. So the demand side. The Claims Code addresses integrity on the demand side by guiding companies and other non-state actors on how they can credibly make voluntary use of carbon credits as part of their climate commitments and what they can communicate regarding the use of those credits. As such, it provides clarity, transparency, and consistency on what these commitments and claims mean and have been established precisely to give confidence to all those engaging with voluntary carbon markets, so the investors, companies directly, the consumers, and all the stakeholders around this environment.
Thank you, Anna, for also introducing your framework for the claims code guidance and practice. I think that really helps the users how they are using towards a high quality credit and how they can be claiming those use. And thank you very much. And I also wanted to follow up, continue with Anna. for the questions. Now, particularly the relationship between the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, how does the VCMI see the private sector demand interacting with this Article 6 of the Paris Agreement?
Well, I think first of all, thank you. I think first of all, it's important to mention that the private sector can and will drive demand for Article 6 credits, particularly under the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, the PACM, Article 6.4, and as countries look to integrate Article 6 credits within their domestic carbon pricing initiatives. VCMI recently updated the claims code of practice that we were just talking about to include Article 6.4 credits as one option alongside ICVCM CCP eligible credits that the private sector can use to make a high integrity VCMI claim, either silver, gold, or platinum carbon integrity claims. Some businesses may be required to purchase authorized credits, so the ITMOS internationally transfer mitigation outcomes, to fulfill obligations under national or international compliance schemes aligned with Article 6. Croatia is one example of this, and many governments, such as Singapore, for instance, are linking Article 6 credits to domestic carbon taxes or emission trading schemes. VCMI has even established an interim phase before ICVCM CCP credits in Article 6.4 are widely available in the market. So either by purchasing Corsia credits or by publicly disclosing that their due diligence process is aligned with the 10 core carbon principles established by ICVCM. And we have, including to provide even more clarity and to make sure everybody has all the information in place, we have directly brought all the 10 CCPs into the claims code of practice so that the market can have all the information at once together. And there are obviously interoperability benefits, as Article 6 provides for interoperability between voluntary and compliance markets, making it easier, I believe, for private buyers to engage across multiple platforms. I think we've always looked at this as a binary way in terms of we were either addressing voluntary carbon markets or regulated markets. And more, I think we need to understand that these things are coming together, which is actually a good sign to the market. And of course, companies need more clarity on how they will operate together.
Thank you, Anna. Also touching upon your also integration with the 6.4 mechanism, known as the Paris Agreement credit mechanism, to be also part of the claims code guidance, and really looking forward to how those interactions also plays out. So moving on to Anton, also similar questions related to the Article 6. So the ICVCM has developed the core carbon principle, CCP, and to support high integrity in the supply side of market. So what do you see the role of this CCP in the Article 6 context?
Thank you very much, Kazu. And I think I'll also build up on what Anna just said. I think whenever we are having this conversation in the carbon markets world, in the first 30 seconds of any of it, somebody will say the word convergence, right? And it really has been thrown around as something that is happening, but it's really happening right now. And we're really seeing happening and Article 6 is playing a huge role in this convergence. Because what we are seeing in the Article 6 space is that we are having all these different crediting, the sources for credits entering the Article 6 system. We have, well, first of all, Article 6 has its own mechanism, the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, which operates like a program. We have countries using domestic carbon crediting schemes overseen by national governments, essentially. And we are having independent carbon crediting standards and registries also being used as the source of credits for Article 6 transactions. And Anna mentioned the case of Singapore, and that is exactly one of those cases where independent carbon crediting mechanisms, which we use to call VCM programs, are generating credits that are then used for domestic compliance in Singapore, and are also being accounted for in the Article 6 accounting system. So this is one of those cases where we see this convergence. And what this means for a standard setting body like ICVCM is that the CCP label can provide comparability across different approaches as to the integrity of the underlying mitigation outcomes. Now, we will be seeing countries directly trading CCP labeled credits, and that is a very welcome, of course, development that we're hoping to see more of, because having a CCP label basically is a way to robustly demonstrate that these credits are Article 6 are in line with Article 6 guidance in terms of the environmental integrity of the credits. And that is one of the ways. And that creates interoperability, that creates comparability. And of course, the CCPs and the assessment framework are there for government actors as well, for international carbon crediting programs to look at and to use them as a public good to sort of be able to compare to how the credits generated in those systems can be compared and contrasted to the high integrity credits in the independent carbon crediting space. So really, to make it short, in the Article 6 world, CCPs are about readiness, creating readiness in programs and countries for an Article 6, for a Paris Alliance carbon crediting market. They're about comparability and making markets interoperable.
Thank you, Anton, which is also very great insight. As you mentioned, like there's a convergence, but at the same time, we have a different approaches or programs, 6.4, independent standard, domestic, or bilaterals. So I think ICVCM also provide a kind of a platform for the comparability. I think that's also something we see as a greater role of the initiative like ICVCM. And thank you so much. So Anna, move on to also a related topic, which ICVCM is also addressing, which is Scope 3. So the VCMI recently they provided the Scope 3, the action code of practice. So could you share a little bit more about this topic and how the VCMI is really providing this approach?
Certainly. The claims code of practice that I have already mentioned provides carbon integrity claims that have been designed for companies that are going above and beyond. So those companies have either already met their emission reduction targets, near-term emission reduction targets, or are making progress towards that. We do understand, though, that this addresses a set of companies, but not all. And there are a lot of companies that are making true efforts, but still facing barriers in reducing emissions. To those companies, first, we have developed the Scope 3 Action Code of Practice that has been launched on April 30th, providing a code backed by businesses, organizations, and coalitions, including the International Chamber of Commerce, Women Business Coalition, Environment Defense Fund, and the World Economic Forum, among others, as well as being welcomed by the UK, Peru, and Panama governments. So the code sets a new best practice framework, which has been developed to ensure companies continue to take climate action every year, even when their efforts to reduce Scope 3 emissions hit barriers. So the guidance has been set for companies that are making progress in reducing Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, but facing barriers to reduce Scope 3 emissions. Corporate Scope 3 emissions are not being reduced at the pace or scale needed, with many companies falling behind in meeting climate targets. So increased action on Scope 3 emissions is critical to meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement. Yet, the global Scope 3 emissions gap, which is defined as the shortfall between corporate Scope 3 emission reduction targets and what they are actually achieving, so measured by their greenhouse gas emissions inventories, is growing when it needs to be closed. Recent research, and you can users can download that from VCMI's website, a research we have just commissioned with Rambo, and wider analysis done shows that many companies face significant barriers in reducing Scope 3 emissions in line with science-aligned decarbonization pathways. So the code provides a framework for companies, first of all, to establish their Scope 3 emission gaps, and they have different methodology calculations to do that. Publicly disclose the barriers that they are facing, list the measures that have already been implemented and results achieved, and additional measures to deal with existing barriers that still need to be overcome, and the actions they plan to take on unabated Scope 3 emissions using high-quality carbon credits. So it gives companies a practical tool to take action with respect to their current emissions gap. And to do so, companies shall use high-quality carbon credits as established by the ICVCM, but subject to clear guardrails and safeguard established by VCMI to close the Scope 3 emissions gap between their current emissions and a science-aligned pathway each and every year as they implement measures to get back to the pathway and meet their emission reduction targets, thereby enabling climate action now while they address the barriers to reducing their own Scope 3 emissions. So in this case, carbon credits are used in addition to respecting the mitigation hierarchy and not as a substitute for direct decarbonization of emissions. Companies do need to do their homework. The code sets 2040 as the latest time by which companies should have overcome barriers and be back to their decarbonization pathway consistent with reaching net zero. So this is an interim measure. And carbon credits, again, meeting the quality criteria set out in the code, are used in the interim to close the Scope 3 emissions gap, meaning climate action continues to be funded every year through the financing of emissions reduction and removal projects elsewhere. So companies are taking action, they are taking responsibility every single year for those emissions that should not have occurred, while they keep investing to eliminate completely existing barriers to further reduce Scope 3 emissions and then get back to the pathway they should be to actually meet their near-term emission reduction targets, which is also consistent with achieving their long-term emission reduction targets.
Thank you, Anna, for introducing this new Scope 3 guidance from VCMI. And I heard from many companies, they are also struggling to reduce, especially for Scope 3 emissions. And I think this really creates a lot of a good framework and also gives the guidance of the company, how they can identify those Scope 3 emissions gap, as you mentioned, and also how we can address this through the use of high quality credits and how they can strategize those Scope 3 emissions. So thank you very much. Looking forward to see the more developments in this area. Now I also move on to the Anton for your more about the recent approval of the ICVCMI CCP level, especially the latest approval of the cookstove and biodigester methodologies from Gold Standard and Vera, and what it means for the carbon credits and carbon markets.
Thank you very much, Kazu. Yeah, so that's the most recent announcement of approved methodologies from the Integrity Council. Previously, we've already approved some methodologies in landfill gas utilization projects, ozone depletions, substances projects, and leak detection and repair. Some methodologies in the deforestation activity types, but this is cookstoves was a decision that a lot of people have been looking forward to, because cookstove related projects are hugely important for sustainable development, right? We have more than 2 billion people globally that still lack access to clean cooking, and that is one of the reasons why investors and buyers have been looking into these project types for a long time now, because of their enormous economic, health, environmental benefits besides the carbon content. but there have been challenges in robust quantification of these activity types. There have been concerns around overcrediting, which basically means that the way the carbon credits that companies get from the projects are actually lower than they were expected to be and that they were reported to be. And the Integrity Council's decision on cookstove addresses many of those challenges. So we have indeed approved several methodologies that are used by Vera and Gold Standard, to ICVCM CCP eligible programs, for which we have also done an assessment of their governance and transparency procedures. And we have approved several methodologies with some robust conditions relating to the quantification of emission reductions, fuel consumption, charcoal emissions, and some other elements of the methodologies that have been raising a lot of challenges in the market previously. So we really hope that now with these decisions, investors and buyers have a very clear indication of what sort of carbon credits they can invest in. Now, granted, this is a major shift for the market. There will have to be procedures in place to fulfill those conditions, and only then we will actually have a volume of CCP eligible credits. But we really hope that this shows that there are robust ways to quantify emissions from cookstove projects that can allow finance to flow to those projects and finance both the mitigation and all the health and social co-benefits that stem from this very important project, particularly for the developing world.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anton, for elaborating the latest development in the ICVCM approval. And I also see you also look at the governance part of this, how those credits were generated with high integrity. So something also I see the relationship between those G7 principles, talking about those transparency in governance. That has been already also addressed in the context of methodologies on certain sectors. So I also now I wanted to move on to the next topic, which is also looking at the kind of interactions between the international carbon market and also the domestic carbon market, which is also be the compliance or voluntary in the domestic context. So first, I wanted to start with asking the questions to Anton about how this kind of international and domestic kind of internship relationship could affecting the work of the supply side integrity.
Thank you. That's a very important question. I think building a bridge back to our conversation around Article 6 and convergence with that world, this is really part of the same process. As we mentioned from the supply side, and I think it's different because in this world it's very difficult to separate sometimes, especially in regulation, because I don't think that in many cases regulators themselves see the divide as clear as market participants do. But in terms of I'll talk about the supply of high integrity credits and how that is affected by both buyer countries regulation and seller countries regulation, if we simplify that in this sense. So obviously, the demand for high integrity supply is very important, and we're seeing a lot of initiatives and governments trying to step in and create this room for supply of high integrity credits to grow. And we're seeing, for example, consultations happening in the UK and Singapore, focusing on how the regulation can and policy incentives can incentivize the use of high integrity carbon credits. And that in turn motivates project developers and host countries to become more active in this space. We've seen recently an announcement that was fostered and initiated by the French government to attract attention to high integrity supply of carbon credits. But on the side of host countries, it's also very, very important because they're looking at how they can attract private carbon finance to their countries. And the key here is high integrity of the carbon credits, because international buyers are looking at this. International buyers are looking at the quality of supply, and there's a lot that host countries can do. They can direct the attention of their project developers active in their countries to higher integrity carbon credits, for example, referencing the CCP label and relying on CCP labeled independent programs and approved methodologies. But they can also do a lot to align their domestic crediting mechanisms with global best practice and high integrity, because this gives them access to both voluntary buyers and it gives them access to Article 6 and the potential of robust trading infrastructure and integrity thresholds in the Article 6 world. So really, I think we have to start looking at high integrity as the entry ticket into international trading. This is what allows, this assures demand side countries that whatever they are allowing their corporates to use is of high quality, and this assures that there is demand for the activities happening in supply side countries. That's the way we see the interaction here. And of course, the CCPs and the assessment framework are there to help guide and compare.
Thank you, Anton. This is, of course, evolving topic, as many countries are developing their own framework, be it like ETS or voluntary carbon market in their own space, which are also interacting with the international carbon market. So I'm sure there's a space where like ICVCM can play also the comparability to both sides. Thank you. And I also now move to Anna about the demand side, especially what should business keep in mind as international cooperation from carbon markets grow? So especially for the business side, for the use of carbon credit.
Thank you, Kazu. I absolutely agree with what Anton was just bringing as on the not as a difficulty, but it's just that when you're coming from policy, you don't actually put that out there in a way that separates supply and demand. But it is important to bring overall, I think, a positive sign for companies, which again will act both on the supplies and demand side of carbon markets. So it's important to state, I think, that international cooperation will continue to grow, allowing carbon markets to scale both in size and impact, only if underpinned by high integrity. And we have been seeing some good examples already in the market about that. As Paris-aligned carbon credits, carbon markets continue to mature, both under Article 6 and independently, businesses must align with integrity and transparency standards to maintain credibility. So VCMI provides clear guidance regarding how businesses can credibly operate within the carbon market, and would encourage all sustainability professionals out there to align their strategies with well-established global best practice. I think it's also important to highlight something that maybe we have overlooked so far in the conversation about how these guidance is put together. So it's not just ICVCM from one side and VCMI alone developing these guidance, but this is done conjunctly. This is done through a very robust stakeholder process. So we were talking about the claims code of practice. The first provisional claims code was launched in 2022. Then we had public consultation. We had thorough feedback. We built on it so that we could deliver the final outcome. The same process was established last year for the scope traction code of practice. So we road test with companies. We have early adopters program. We have a stakeholder forum gathering representatives from civil society, NGOs, government representatives, private sector. We have our expert advisory group. So all of that comes into play so that we can really make sure that what we're bringing is sound with the market at the moment, and is evidenced, is science aligned, and really takes into consideration all the inputs and elements that are being brought by different stakeholders, so that we can make sure this sets best practice and is accepted by all, so that we can help the market move forward. Prioritizing, I believe, integrity, as we've been discussing, through all business operations when engaging with carbon markets, avoid reputational risk. And prioritizing high integrity credits, for instance, those adhering to the core carbon principles, helps to mitigate this risk. I think that's an important message to be strengthened. Lastly, businesses should continue to monitor policy changes at national and international levels. So again, not always we have full clarity, but that's also an area on which VCMI provides support specifically to host countries, so that they can fully understand all the myriad of tools they have in the market, so that they can make use of all the potential and different strategies to achieve climate financing to fulfill their NDCs. As operationalization of the Article 6 mechanisms, as we've been discussing, as well as domestic reporting, disclosure, target setting, carbon pricing policies, and regulation continue to evolve, which are all likely to impact both supply and demand and allowed use of credits in a credible way and with high integrity.
Thank you, Anna. I see the very important role that VCMI can play for really navigating the private sector to really reducing the risk, as well as providing the confidence in the market for those who are really using the high integrity carbon credits. So I really see the big role that VCMI can play. At the same time, you as mentioned that maybe this kind of ICVCM, VCMI together also play a very important role to integrate those kind of a diverse market, but at the same time try to put it into a more comprehensive way. So thank you, Anna, for really putting to the very important part of the private sectors navigating this important market. So thank you very much. I see there was many emerging opportunities as well as a challenge moving forward for the voluntary market, as well as the intersection between the Article 6 and domestic compliance market. So thank you for both for very much for joining today and sharing valuable insights into the supply and demand side of carbon market integrity. And I do hope that this conversation really inform everybody, those who are interested in using carbon market and how those credits will be used and how we can find the high quality carbon credit based on the tools that VCMI and ICVCM is providing. So to learn more about A6IP and VCMI, ICVCM, please visit our website, link in the comment section. This is also broadcast in YouTube. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to Carbon Market Now, and follow A6IP for more insights into the evolving world of international carbon markets. Both A6IP and ICVCM and VCMI has been continue working together, and we look forward to providing more information on this very important area. So thank you for joining us, and see you in the next episode. Hi. This section of episode provides some of the important updates on Article 6 and carbon market, selected by Article 6 Implementation Partnership Center. We have selected 6 topics this time. The first Article 6.2 Ambition Dialogue was held during UNFCCC subsidiary body meeting in June, where many parties and stakeholders discussed how Article 6 can enhance ambition. This dialogue will continue and reconvene at COP30 in Brazil. A new methodology under the Article 6.4 mechanism, known as PACM, Paris Agreement Credit Mechanism, has been proposed. There were 4 new methodologies under consideration, which include emission reduction activities from the production of ammonia, N2 abatement, pumped hydro, and use of clean cookstoves. Those proposed methodologies will be considered at the next 6.4 supervisory body meeting in August. In July 2nd, European Commission proposed new 2040 EU target, 90% reduction relative to 1990, and a role for the use of high-quality international credits under the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement towards its target. The Commission will work with the EU Council to finalize the communication of the updated NDC. There was a new bilateral cooperation signed under the Article 6.2 between Kenya and Sweden on 16th June. Congratulations for this great outcome. On the voluntary carbon markets, ICVCM, Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Market, approved adipic acid methodologies and additional clean cookstove methodology, adding another core carbon principle, CCP labeled methodologies. The last but not least, the World Bank has published its flagship report on state and trends of carbon pricing 2025 at the occasion of Innovate for Climate in Spain, which covers comprehensive overview of current carbon credit mechanisms around the world. So please check this out. Again, thank you for watching Carbon Market Now, and see you in our next episode.